So I think sometimes when people are misaligned, I think one of the things that happens regularly is we begin complaining. I go back and look at a role that I did fulfill with the Atlanta Braves in the early days, where I actually began working under the Atlanta Braves organization, and we've talked about it regularly.
Discover Your Spiritual Gifts is a new online Bible study we have created here at Place Ministries to help people discover their spiritual gifts and meditate on how to understand them and see them in their own lives. For almost 30 years, my dad has sat down with thousands of people around the world and heard an overwhelming desire for believers to not just know their gifts, but to understand them. This study is for them. This study is for you, to equip your people and to encourage your people, and to show them how God has been, can be, and will continue to use them through their spiritual gifts. Hey y'all, welcome to the My Place podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm your host, Mary McSwain, and I'm joined, as I normally am, by my dad, Jay McSwain.
And Mary, it's good to be with you in the daytime as we normally record at night, but we're recording in the day, and it's good to be with you today.
We're in a bit of a different studio. For those of y'all who are watching us on YouTube, you can watch on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. But if you're tuning in on YouTube, you might notice that we're in a different studio today because we're still in basketball season, which means that you have plans tonight.
Yes, we had to move our podcast recording to today. And I did something. If you go back a couple of weeks, I think, and look at when we were recording in here last time, I loved that you had blue on. It looked really good in here. And so I decided I'd wear blue. Yours was, I think, a little brighter, but I'm pretty excited to see what it looks like because it really looked good on you. So I got blue on today.
Is tonight a big game?
Oh, tonight is a huge game. We're the number 9 team in the state. And Milton High School, who we're playing, is the number 11 team. And they've only lost one in-state game, and that was to a powerhouse. So tonight is a huge game. Yes. And I'm so pumped. You're actually going too.
I am. I'm going to go with one of our friends, Taylor. Her sister is still on the team. And just to clarify for all of y'all listening, he's not the coach. He's obviously not playing, but you have to go to every single game.
Yeah, because I am the fan of the year from last year. I hope I get that award this year.
It's true. I think you might. I don't know who would beat you out for it, but this is, I would say, probably your main hobby outside of work. You have a lot of different things that you do, a lot of quote unquote jobs, ministries, opportunities. And you always say this is the one place where nobody really expects anything of you. So
I just get to show up and be a fan.
It's your hobby, because everywhere else you do a lot of things. You work for Place, you have a role with the Atlanta Braves, and you're on staff at First Redeemer. So you have a lot of different insight into the ways that church works, different staffing dynamics, whether that be ministry or corporate or what you do here at Place Ministries. So you have a lot of insight into what staff dynamics look like, whether again, that be at a big corporation like the Braves or at a church like First Redeemer. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because everyone listening has experienced the dynamics of a team or a staff, whether they've been a part of one or they've experienced the effects of one. Everyone has firsthand experience in one way or another of what a healthy or unhealthy team looks like. Now, Dad, you've served on multiple church staffs over the years, and you've worked with even more consulting and training different staffs. From what you've seen, what are the signs of a healthy staff or team?
Well, I need to do something first because this was fascinating. You give me the questions ahead of time, and I really spent some intense, really focused time on the questions. And something happened as I was thinking through your questions, like what are some healthy, unhealthy things that I see? And Mary, I went through and I put down all the different places that I've worked since I was in college. I've actually worked in 5 churches, including the church where I committed my life to Christ in my hometown of Vidalia. I was a youth intern for 2 years. I was a student pastor in Mineral Wells, Texas when I was in seminary. Out of seminary, I worked at Northside Baptist Church in West Columbia, South Carolina. And then where I actually wrote Place, Council Road, in outside of Oklahoma City, and now I'm on staff at First Redeemer. And then I did something else. I looked at the places outside of church that I had gone to. When I was in seminary, I worked at a place called International Evangelism Association. That was my last year of seminary, and that was only 9 months because I just did it during the year. I worked for several years in our family's building business, McCarr Homes. And then your mom and I worked at Golden Gate Seminary, where I now get to teach a lot. Even I'll be there in a couple of weeks. And of course, Place, and then the Atlanta Braves. And First Redeemer Church, Place, and the Atlanta Braves have now been for 11 years, because I've been with the Braves 16, I've been with Place 29. But going back, and I really encourage, you don't have that much experience, but especially people who have quite a few experiences like I have, to go back. And this is what was so like wow for me. I looked at some of them had a lot of issues and weren't healthy. And all of them had issues, but some were really unhealthy. But when I looked at them, I thrived in every one except the 9 months that I worked at the International Evangelism Association. And maybe if I'd stayed longer, but what they had me doing was so not me. But even in some of these, and I'm not going to say that were really, really unhealthy, I can't tell you in the 45 plus years, all of them, I saw unbelievable things that I love doing and things that I think God used me at. So I think sometimes if you go back and do an inventory of your own history of where you've been at, ask yourself, was it unhealthy? Yeah, that's one thing. But even in some unhealthy places, if you're in the right place, you can still thrive. So the question was, what have I seen about some unhealthy things and unhealthy signs in some of these churches, organizations, right? Well, I told you yesterday that I did a little pre-work, and in our Bible study in the front office with the Atlanta Braves, I asked the group there, I said, okay, what makes a healthy team? And, they gave things like you laugh together, your opinions are valued by those that are in leadership. You do things outside of work together. I think those are obviously common sense. Those are healthy things if you're going to different team members, maybe that don't even work in your area, asking them for input. People in meetings are listening to what others who may not even work in your area, what their input is to you, and you want their input. Those are some of the healthy things. I'm going to go a totally different turn with you. Those are things, if you picked up books on healthy teams and unhealthy teams, they would all be in there and they'd all tell their stories about it. But here's what I think can make a really, really, really healthy team, or if you're not practicing this, can make an unhealthy team. When the team is not carrying out the vision of the leader. Now, I was at one place and I didn't respect the leader. There was nothing wrong with the leader from a character standpoint, from an integrity. He wasn't doing anything that was unethical, nothing. I just didn't have respect. And I realized in that organization, others didn't have respect. In all the little lunches we do with the group I was part of, they would talk about the leader and I realized I can't stay here because I've found that oftentimes when people may not respect the leader and they start jabbering and, little biting on the leader, that it just destroys the moral. And I tell church leaders this all the time, senior pastors especially. Don't really be concerned what people say about you that's not true. And they say these character things if they're not true. Be concerned at the ones that they tell you that are true, because then people can start observing, because we all have character issues. But I wrote this down, and again, what is a healthy team? It is when the team is carrying out the vision of the leader. I want to give you one of the best statements I ever heard. It's from your granddad, my dad. When I worked for him, he said to your uncle and aunt, because we were right underneath him, he said, I want you to make the same decision 95% of the time that I would make. And he said, when that 5% you make is not the decision I would make, I will bring it to your attention. And he said, and I don't want that to, and I will not beat you up, but I want you to make the decision that I would make. And he said, and next time I don't want that to be one of the 5%. And he went one step further. He said that in our company, there may be people that don't even really know who I am. Our family's business grew to be a very large construction company throughout the Southeast with probably 1,010,000 workers a day. And obviously they didn't know who Dan McSwain is. But he said, I want the people who don't even know who I am to make the same decision that I would make. When that doesn't happen, Mary, you have an unhealthy team. When it does happen, you have a healthy team. Here's what I think is one of the greatest things that makes for an unhealthy team is when team members, and they're not the boss, think they're the boss. I remember, it's so interesting. My dad, he's at the end of the journey for him. And so many things that he said to me about teams, about leadership are coming back to me in these last days of his life. But if I would complain about the way we were doing something and I didn't want to do it that way, he told me this more than once. I wish he could have only said once. He said, you know what? If you don't like the way we're doing it, you can always go and leave and start your own company and you can be the boss. I think it is healthy when the team members know who the boss is, when the team members take the vision of the boss, even if it's not exactly what they would do. And if they can't receive that vision or that leadership, I think that they probably need to leave. Not the leader, but the team member. And I've been in a situation where it did take place one time. So that was not your typical make sure that everybody's valued, make sure that you're laughing together, make sure that, you're doing stuff outside of work. Those are all healthy signs. But I really believe when people don't follow the leader, that you're going to have an unhealthy culture.
Because when you're following the leader, everyone on the team is aligned. They have the same vision and they're going in the same direction. It's kind of like when people are trying to row in, it's not a boat, but the sport of rowing. Everyone on that boat has a different role and they have to know their role so that they're rowing in the same direction. Because if you're off, you're going to end up going in circles.
Yeah.
And typically, there was a movie that came out about this, The Boys in the Boat, I think, and it would have better insight than this. But I'm pretty sure on those rowing boats, there's always one person that's in charge, that's making the calls, that's keeping everybody's pace.
Mm-hmm.
And that pace being aligned keeps everyone moving in the same direction. And in a team, when you have a leader, if everyone's not following the direction of that leader, there's not going to be alignment. And instead of moving forward, you're just going to move in circles all the time. And one of the things that I saw that was interesting in some of my research was a lot of people said that effective teams have a very deep bench, because what is a leader without its teammates, or what is a coach without its players? But if you have a team and the players aren't carrying out the vision of the coach, then everyone's going to be on a different page, and you're not going to be playing together. You're not going to be playing as one. You're going to be playing as a bunch of individuals, and the plays are going to be ineffective. You can't run anything.
Mm-hmm.
And in a similar way to what you were saying, is that you have to share the vision of the leader, or if you're rowing, you have to all be in alignment with the caller so that you're all moving in the same direction, or else you're going to be spinning in circles. You're not going to be moving forward.
I want to make one more comment before you get to the next question, because I've got them written down here that you gave me. This is something else I've seen about when you look at healthy teams versus unhealthy teams. Oftentimes, if you're not behind the curtain, and let's just take church, and I've seen this, you've said that I've worked with a lot of churches. I've worked with a lot of church staffs. And what I've seen sometimes is people say, oh, he is so great, and it must be great working at that church. And then when I go behind the curtain, what appears to be healthy from the person sitting, and I'll use the word pew, chair, whatever it is, when you get behind that curtain, it is anything but healthy. Sometimes what people perceive as success, they perceive that as health, and it's not always true. I'll never forget, I was just getting place going. I was on staff in Oklahoma City, and I sat down with our senior pastor, and he brought up a very well-known church, and he brought up that it's not fair, and he named some others, how they get to where they are. And it was pretty much sometimes destroying people's lives along the way. If they're not performing, just get rid of them. And he goes, it's not fair. And you know what I said to him? I'll never forget. I said, you know, Mark, there is another world, and we will get our rewards or lack of rewards in that next world. And I said, what your greatest strength is can sometimes be your greatest weakness, and your greatest strength is you care about people. And sometimes that may not be great for the organization, but I said, I'd much rather serve under somebody that cares about people than all it is the end result. And, you know, I was so reminded of that yesterday. I meet pretty regular with our senior pastor where I serve, and something happened yesterday. It was a tough decision for him, and it involved a person, and it really bothered him. And I actually even got up this morning, and I was preparing for this, and I just thought about how much I admired him because he cares, and it bothered him that he had to make a hard decision about a people issue. And that to me is healthy. And I'm not going to go, because one of my other answers goes to that very thought. But yes, sometimes what looks to be healthy on the outside is almost like, have you ever had an apple? And the apple looked perfectly great on the outside, all red and looks all and you bite into it and it's rotten on the inside. I think that can be true of a lot of churches and a lot of staffs. It looks shiny on the outside, but when you bite it, it's rotten on the inside.
For someone who is on the inside, whether they are a member of the team or the leader of the team, how could someone evaluate or identify where some of that dysfunction is coming from, causing the team to be unhealthy on the inside?
You know, I think a lot of times one of the things, especially in what we do, is that the person is not being, the team member, let's say, that they're not being able to live out who they are. Like And again, this was a great exercise for me when I looked at those 10 places that I've served at, and I thought about some of them were unhealthy, but I loved every one of them except one. And that was only a 9-month where I worked at. And when I evaluated it for me is all of the bosses that I've worked for have allowed me to be able to live out who I am. I'm not a structured person. I'm not an in the box person. I think outside boxes. I like new and different. And they've all kind of encouraged me. They've cheerleaded me. They've, given me opportunities. So I think sometimes when people are misaligned, I think one of the things that happens regularly is we begin complaining. I go back and look at a role that I did fulfill with the Atlanta Braves in the early days before I actually began working under the Atlanta Braves organization. And we've talked about it regularly. I feel like I was being micromanaged, and I feel like I was always being put in a box. And as I look back at it, I really feel that organization, that was what was best for that organization. It wasn't what was best for me. So they weren't wrong and me right, or me wrong, they were right. I was just misaligned. And probably if I go back and think about it, I probably said some negative things, and I could have said, this isn't a great organization, but they were. It's just sometimes when we're not in the right place, we go in and create discord and strife when it really shouldn't be there. I think that's a lot of times what happens.
That is a great point for somebody on the inside that is a team member when they're experiencing something that seems disordered or dysfunctional and they're becoming frustrated. It may not be that the organization is wrong. It may be that you are not in the right place where you will flourish. When it came to your role at the Braves, that didn't mean that you leave the organization as a whole, but your role shifted. And when you were in the right place, that's when you started to flourish.
Yeah.
Some of your role did shift, but it was a matter of you not being in the right place, not the place you were in being at fault.
And the CEO of the Braves really allowing me to flourish in the role that I moved into, and allowing me to be outside. I had boundaries and rules, but be outside the box. So again, in a lot of ways, it was the same role in many ways, but even who I reported to was different, which gave me the organization, the Atlanta Braves, was different than the other organization who had a different set of rules, policies than the Atlanta Braves. And so again, one wasn't right and one wasn't wrong. But I went back and looked at these areas, so oftentimes when I said negative things maybe that I could have been creating, because that creates unhealthiness. When team members are saying negative things about the leader, that creates unhealthiness. And a lot of times it is nothing wrong with the leader, but again, let's go back and say it again. You're in the wrong place. You're not set up as an individual to succeed. And when that happens, you probably need to leave.
And I do believe that there is responsibility on both the individual's part and the leader's part. The individual's responsibility is to know the place where they will thrive so that they can properly evaluate their experience in that role. The leader's job, however, is to know who the people are that they are leading so that they know, how can I lead this person to the right place where they will thrive? That's one of the values of using place as a tool in your toolbox as a leader, is so that you can evaluate what is not working as it should. It's not that these people aren't competent to do this job that I've put them in. It's not that they don't have the capabilities or the competencies, but have I not created an environment for them where they will thrive? Do they have the gift of helps and they have been disconnected from all of their leaders or their co-captains, and something needs to shift for them to be able to flourish in the role that they're in? And that goes into even our next question.
Which, by the way, we brought this up in previous episodes, we experience that quite regularly, that when I don't take who you are, I frustrate you. When I don't set you up in the right environment, we call it the abilities part of place, the A in place. But when I don't set you up in the right environment, you flounder, you get discouraged, you get irritated with the ball. But that's on me, because I'm the one that sets what the environment is for you. So you're right. It isn't always just on the person. It's oftentimes on the leader to create, and that's the value of knowing who your people are. Not just are they somebody that is articulate or whatever. You got to know your people and where they thrive and don't thrive.
And that feeds into this next question of what is the difference between knowing what someone can contribute to your team and understanding how they function as a person on your team?
I'm going to answer this a little bit different because than even some of the insight you gave, and then you come back and give your insight. What is the difference between knowing what someone can contribute on your team and understanding how they function as a person or as an individual? What's the difference? In one, you care for the person, and in another one, you only care for the result of what the person can get you, and they are nothing more than just a means to an end. And that is one of the signs of an unhealthy team. And there are a lot of that unhealthiness out there where you don't care about the person. All you care about is the result that they can give you.
And when I was doing some of the research that I was doing on some of the signs of a healthy or unhealthy team, there tended to be two extremes that a team could be taken to. One is where you're so concerned about team health, it impacts your performance, and then morale becomes low because you're not making an impact because you're not executing anything.
That's good.
The flip side of that is when you're so consumed and concerned with high performance, that goes to the detriment of team health, and everyone on the team starts to just feel like a means to an end because all we're concerned about is the results, not the people who get you the results that you're looking for. And when it comes to understanding not just what somebody brings to the table, but who they are as a person, it's more than just the skills and competencies that they have to bring to contribute to the goal that you have. Because again, if you're so concerned with high performance and executing your mission, you're disregarding the people that execute your mission. It makes me think of all of the mission statements that churches have. Those are great, but it's just a statement. It's nothing without the people who pursue and execute the fulfilling of that statement.
Here's what we say all the time in so many different contexts. Any strength taken to an extreme can become a weakness. When all you do is care about the team, the individual, and not the result, and that's the extreme of that, that can become unhealthy. And you were very articulate in saying why, because eventually you don't perform, and that causes morale to be bad. The other extreme is where all you want is to people to perform and you don't care about them. Either one of those taken to an extreme can become a major, we call it weakness in the personality. In the discussion today on healthy versus unhealthy teams, any one of those extremes becomes unhealthy.
You've spent much of your ministry understanding people as individuals. What is the importance then of a leader understanding their people, their team as individuals, in addition to understanding how they contribute to the communal goal?
I wrote down a couple of things, and I thought of something else even as we've been in this discussion. So one of the understanding your people is that you'll have harmony, you'll have peace, but also you will be able to help the team member leverage to be as impactful as they can. They leverage who they are, which will give the greatest result in the end for the team. And the importance of understanding the person, it is being Christ-like. And I wrote this, why Christ would do ministry is because he wanted and believed in other people and wanted the best for other people, whether it was his group of 12 or whether it be the masses that he was talking to. That's the way Christ did ministry. And he does tell us to, as Paul tells us, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ.
And that is our goal as Christians. That's our goal as the church, is to reflect Christ and to model not just the life that he lived, but the ministry that he pursued. And going back to the mission statement, what's way more important than the mission statement on the wall is the people that carry it out and the people that you're carrying it to. And that's what ministry is about. It's about people. You have to execute, you have to perform. But in order to do that, you need people to be in the right place in order to be fulfilled, but also effective to execute the goals that you have. And that's why it's so important for us that people find their place, is so that your goals can be accomplished and you can execute the things that you want to with whatever your mission statement is for your church or for your team. But in order to do that, you have to have a healthy team. And that involves having people in the right place and also having a leader that knows what those roles are and how they can best help their people, their team members, find their place, fulfill their roles, and execute and perform. Again, all for the glory of the Lord and to imitate Christ in that way.
Before we close out, I want to just say one more thing. So if you've never done this, write down all the different places that you've served at, worked at, and then ask yourself, did I flourish as an individual there? And was that organization, that church, that ministry, was it healthy or unhealthy? Sometimes you can flourish even in unhealthy situations if you're being used by God. It doesn't mean that you're not aware that they're unhealthy, but ask yourself. It was really a neat exercise for me, Mary, to go back and look at the 10 places that I've served at in roughly 46 years and why I thrived, even when sometimes they weren't in the most healthy situations. So it's a good exercise.
I think that is a great exercise to close and wrap up our conversation today, is to encourage y'all to reflect on some of the places that the Lord has brought you to, maybe brought you through, as you evaluate the teams that he has brought you on, the teams that he has taken you from, and to evaluate your experience today. And make sure you stay tuned for next week's episode, because we are going to be talking about how and why you should consider who you bring onto your team as you continue to build the team around you. So make sure you stay tuned for next week's episode.